Okay. Greetings, sacred beings, sacred souls. Welcome to Sacred Her Story podcast. Today we have this amazing, loving, genuine, adoring woman who's here to share her story. She walks with such beauty and grace, and I'm so excited to have her here. Her name is Ariela Alavi. Welcome, welcome, welcome. She's a she practices energy medicine and is an intuitive guider. She is into ancient wisdom and modern healing. She helps women align with the earth and soul, and she offers circles and private sessions. So her information will be below in the podcast. Welcome, Ariela. How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. It's fun to connect with you in this way.
I know, right? I'm so honored and I'm so glad you're here. And let's just get right to it. You're the sacred medicine woman. And first question is, what brought you to this and what's your background? Please share a bit of like where you came from, how you became this energy medicine woman and this intuitive guider or guidance, however you want to say it.
Yeah. Um, it's interesting. I mean, I think we're all born with this ability, and I think it's just like circumstances happened in my life that led me to this. But the more that, and I'm sure we'll get to it, but the more I've studied the nervous system, I think what happened was some traumas and some little, I call them little T's and big T's, like big traumas, little traumas. And I think what happened was from some upsets in my early life, I opened up my crown chakra and became more intuitive because the body felt like not a very safe place to dwell. And that has just come to me recently. And so I think I was born with it just like you and just like everybody else on this planet. But I think a lot of us with traumas, and again, everybody's traumas are big and little depending on what they believe they are and how they've been. But that opened up a piece of me. So I started talking to animals, when I was younger and really, I just felt like I was home in nature and I felt the most home in my body in nature. And that was like at a really young age. I used to go camping with my family and I would just be like, I need more of this. And I really didn't understand why. And then, in my probably early 20s, I found Kabbalah, which is Jewish mysticism. And that's a whole long story, but my mom introduced me to it. And what I recognized was that there is this really deep energy and wisdom available from not just in Judaism, but like in all cultures, there is ancient wisdom, and we all have these ancestors, communally, societally, culturally, and then personally. We have these amazing ancestors that I call them the wise and well ones or the council, and they are your own people that have skin in the game because they're part of your blood.
Mhm.
And what I tapped into was like this aha moment that changed my life. And it really counterbalanced the feeling of I don't belong in my body. My body's not a safe place to be. I never thought I was enough. I never thought that I remember like at a young age I would go to Disneyland. I lived in Los Angeles. We would go to Disneyland. And at like 13, 12, I was like searching for my home. And I know that sounds so weird. Like, why would you go to Disneyland and search for your home? But I was like, I mean, I was a kid and I remember going to Italy with my family when I was 16. And I was like, it's kind of like this book that I used to read to my kids, Are You My Mama? And even though I love my mama, I had a great mom and she passed away, but it was like there was something, this deeper calling of like, this isn't home for me. And where is my home?
Mm.
And yeah, and what I found, over like I have a longer story from there. I got married. I have 4 kids. We moved all of our kids to a mountaintop in the middle of the mountains in Israel 10 years ago.
Wow.
It's 10 years, yeah, and I haven't been back in 10 years, so we're gonna go this summer and just like really listening to my own path and finding my own soul's wisdom has been really important. And through that, I help women walk their way back to their home, which is, the elements are so beautiful. It's kind of what I use. Like earth is walking your way back home to the ancestors and past in your past lives, finding healing and wholeness from them, from those wisdom keepers. And then water is like, how do I find my place and my way back home to my actual body and my emotions?
Mhm.
Because if we skip over, and I know you and I are in the same fields in terms of the shamanic studies, and
Mhm.
like if we only go to spirit and we skip over the fact that your body doesn't feel safe or that you have inflammation or your nervous system is like this crazy.
Yeah.
So water is like helps us walk back home to our bodies. And then air is like, how do I retrain my brain so I live in more of a 5D higher consciousness? How do I release those inner voices that say I'll never be enough? I'll
Mm.
never know who I am. I'll never be able to do those things. And so, like, the quality of air helps us walk back into the energy of spirit and the energy of, like, your soul is here for a higher purpose. And finally, fire is like that energy of full on spirit walking here, like, this earth is heaven on earth if you allow it.
Yes, I love that. Yes.
And like, to me, we don't want to skip over that part. A lot of people get stuck in the body or they get actually stuck in like the spirit place. And I believe home is like you should feel home inside of all of that. And that's really what I help women do is like step into their whole soul, their whole body, not just a portion of it. Because for a long time I tried just the spirit part and just the body part. I was a yoga teacher, somatic therapist, and I was like, oh, wait, there's more here. So I really dove into this idea of God and spirit and creator. And I've been in that realm for 25 years. And then all of a sudden I realized, oh, they have to marry each other,
Yeah.
right? Like there's this sacred marriage. And I don't want anyone leaving this earth without knowing that sacred marriage. It's a deep
I
passion
love
and
that.
soul
That's
purpose
so
of mine.
delicious.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
I hope that answers your question. It started out kind of hard, my childhood, and even though I had a beautiful one, there were definitely parts that were hard, and I just feel like I came here for a really deep reason, and I'm doing that now with other women.
Mm. Wow, you just shared so much, and I love this four elements and connecting with whole body, all, and the sacred marriage of it all. Because we think of marriage just between men and women, but you're bringing in this whole element of connection between spirit, all the elements, everything around us. It's a marriage, it's a sacred unity. So it's so beautiful. I am curious because you said we hear you were finding yourself at Disneyland, you went to Italy, and I do want to later revisit you moving to Israel with your family because that's a huge move from living
Yeah.
in LA to going to Israel. But before we go there, you said you experienced some hard stuff, some hard things. Do you mind sharing a little bit more about that? Because right now it's like, oh, you went to Italy at 16, you went to Disneyland. Oh, you're living the LA life, right? And people think living in LA, you, you got the bells and whistle and you must have a lot of money. So you shared that you went through some hard stuff. And anyone moving through work like this, there has to be some experience that made you say, there's something deeper.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great question. Well, first of all, I grew up in LA. I didn't stay there. I got out as fast as I could, actually. Like I knew I didn't belong there. And like we were talking before the recording started, and like I really, I for the sake of this podcast, but just in general for speaking my truth, like I'd rather be in the mountains with my, like dirty and my feet dirty with mud than be in than to be fancy and to think that I didn't have, I had a very nice life, but I definitely have uncovered some trauma, like sexual trauma. I, my parents got divorced when I was 13 and they did the best they could. And what I've learned from some of these things that have happened to me, like let's take divorce. Many, many parents are divorced, right? There's no judgment, of course.
No judgment. Hmm.
No. Um, but for me, I think I came into this world with like a vision of what I needed. Like I
Mm.
have this idea, this word community in my head. Like it won't stop. It just continues even though I'm in my 50s. And like I build it now and I want that now. It's funny, I was having a conversation with my 14-year-old son this morning and he's a dancer. He dances. We live in Colorado and he dances all types of dances and he belongs to a company and he's like, all I want to do is gather people around and have them be a part of this community. And I was like, oh yeah, I understand that. So I think like the divorce for me was like this crashing down of, does anybody really love me? They didn't choose me. And also that was my community. There goes my community. And so for me, it was just like this devastating loss. And then coupled that with a lot of boundary crossing and some sexual trauma. I just and then I was a strep carrier. Like I had strep throat for about 3 or 4 years as a child and was kind of like it was in the 70s. And so we were just going from one doctor another to another with lots of antibiotics and I've had gut issues since I was probably 8, and Candida and SIBO, and you name it. I've had lots of hormonal issues. So, from all those things, what I've realized is sometimes, often, I would say, if you're living, you have challenges, and that's part of being a human. And some of us have bigger challenges than others. And but there are our own traumas. There are our own, it's how we react to it and how we respond to it, actually. For a lot of times I was in reaction to things that occurred in my life. And I think what I learned just from doing a deep dive, I don't know why I woke up, but I did, right? Like we don't always get to wake up or choose to wake up in this lifetime. And I did wake up and I always felt like the black sheep in my family, even though I love my family and they did the very best they could. And, but it was like this calling and I couldn't figure out what the calling was. And I did figure that out. In my 20s, I met my husband and he was studying to be a rabbi. And we've had it's like a whole other story, but we had two large congregations in Iowa and Boston. And I always thought I would have a lot of kids, and I got to, like, in this lifetime, have 4 kids, which has been the greatest gift and joy of my whole life because I got to build my own community, right? Like my kids are my community. And yes, I have women that are my community. I have good friends. But when I look around my table, 2 are in college and 2 are in high school. When I look around my table and they're all home, it's like I did this. Like I was devastated at age 13 and I made a choice. I really woke up and I made a choice to do it the way that I needed to do it in this lifetime. And I feel very fortunate that I was able to put so much into my kids. And, like we were talking about before we got on, I love people who are just real. And, I don't match my socks because who has time for that when you have a lot of kids? My kids always say like, we know how to tend to our souls, but our laundry isn't always done. And I'm like, yeah, well, you have to choose.
I mean, hello, 4 children. Oh, how
Yeah, you understand that. Three, like if the laundry's on the floor, like fend for yourself, but I love you dearly and like your soul's gonna be fine and you're gonna be good. But sorry, your socks will never match in my house.
I love that.
Ever. But like I just see ancestral work, so you don't have to suffer the way that I have gone through certain things.
Exactly. Exactly. Oh my gosh, I love this. And I love your vulnerableness in sharing with us because it's all relatable. We think that life is picture perfect, everything just flows, and oh, you were born this way. But there was something key that you said. I made a choice, you know, and you chose, and you look at your family, and you said you made your community. And there's a big part in that. We do get to choose. And you shared that. And regardless of what you went through, the pain, and how many women has experienced sexual trauma in their life,
Right.
that's a real big thing. And how that takes us out of our bodies as well. And then on top of that, parents separating. So here's your you think, oh, this is supposed to be my foundation, my community, and it's breaking up before your eyes. But even before that, you were like, I always felt like the black sheep.
Yeah.
you know, I don't belong. And that is something we all, at some point, I'm sure we all can relate to as well, being the black sheep. Like, okay, I don't think like you, but I'm gonna pretend anyways. Or you just go your merry way and figure it out. So you shared
Yeah.
so much in this question with, you said, I made a choice. Now, what brought you, like, what made you realize that? Did you realize it through the process, or is it just recently that you're like, I made a choice?
No, I think it was very conscious. So I had graduated from college, I was getting my master's in social work, and I moved back to Los Angeles for just a little bit to get my master's. And my mom, who was probably 40, early 40s at the time, she had a bat mitzvah. So a bat mitzvah is like a rite of passage for boys and girls, usually at 13.
Okay.
She never chose to or never had one because I think back in those days, like girls didn't always have them. So she did this celebration of life, and she stood up on the stage with other women, and she really found something that felt really meaningful to her. And I was probably 22 at the time, and I sat in the front row and sobbed my eyes out. And I couldn't even tell you why. But my mom, introduced me to this idea of God, creator, spirit, whatever source energy in your real day-to-day life. Like I never grew up. I think that's what the home I was looking for, because if I wasn't going to be home in my body, there's something else. I think I looked at it like I always thought my dog was more than just a dog. I mean, my dog now is more than just a dog
They
too.
are.
Like they
They are.
are. Talk about like spirit incarnate. Like I just always felt like there was something I was missing. Like I wasn't introduced to this. What is this thing I was longing for? And it was a relationship with spirit. And so when I sat in the front row and I just like remember tears pouring down my face, it really opened me to this idea that there is something greater than me, and
Mhm.
it's not just about me,
Mhm.
right? And so from that point on, I think I awakened like a piece of my soul. Like I've done some past life healing for myself and realized like I was like a some sort of ancient studier, wisdom person, teacher. And I've awakened that. And that piece is like, I can't get enough. So that choice was made in my early 20s when I was like, wow, I'm not alone. Maybe my community now is, God, body, soul, mind. I think that's taken years to like actually inhabit, but that
Mhm.
was my first like decision. I'm not going to just go through life blindly. I'm going to step in and recognize that like there's more here than I thought. And that led me to not just down a Jewish path, but a whole spiritual path. Like I don't know if you've ever heard the book Conversations with God with Neil Donald Walsh. That was
Yes.
like the first book I read, and
Okay.
that's
Oh
kind of
my
how
gosh.
I,
Amazing book.
oh,
Amazing
I
book.
mean,
Yeah.
like oh my God, you could have a conversation with God. I was in. I was like, okay, you sold me.
Right?
Yeah.
And oh gosh, this is so good. I love how you brought that book up, but you said, I don't want to go like not go through life blindly,
Mhm.
that there's an intention built in there.
Yeah.
And how often, I mean, thinking of a child, we just carefree, going through life, letting life happen to us in a sense, you
Right.
know. And I can't even say that as a child because I feel like we're so intuitive at such a young age, and that gets broken off somewhere
Yeah.
where somebody says no or um, tells us something that was meant to probably guide us and warn us, but we take it a whole different way because our mind only thinks so much. So, a certain way. And so we just think that, oh, this is life happening to me. I don't have a choice in this. And this is being reinforced. And it's like, you got to think a certain way in schools. You got to believe in a certain way, depending on what church you go to. But then it's really the relationship. That's something that you are sharing. It's like, you made this choice. You wanted to dig deeper and deeper. And I feel like that's so incredible and really key to bring up. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think like the key is this is not this choice I made is available to everybody. I don't know why I woke up at such a young age, but it really doesn't matter. I see clients that are like 75 years old. I see all ages and like I have wonderful women at like 72, 75, and they're like, "Oh my God, I had no idea that I could be so connected to something so beautiful." And honestly, I do think sometimes it takes unfortunately a loss or a tragedy or something to awaken us. I
Mhm.
don't think we always have to learn from pain. Like, I don't know how you feel about that. I wish we,
I agree. I agree. I
yeah.
absolutely agree. Mhm.
Yeah, I wish we didn't. And I also think that I know like being here on this earth is about we get to make choices, right? When we go to the other side, there
Mhm.
aren't really no, we learn and we grow and we heal, but in terms of choices, I used to read, I read something a long time ago that said angels on the other side obviously are jealous of humans because angels don't have choice. They have peace and love and all of that gorgeousness. But the
Right.
one thing they don't have is choice. And we have choice. And sometimes those choices, they suck.
Yeah. Right. Right. I mean, it's like, what do you really need choice when you're like living love and peace and feeling everything great, right? And
Right.
here we come into this world and it's like, oh, I could try this, and you could try one thing that's the wrong thing, and you get stuck there and you lose yourself,
Mhm.
right? You lose who you are altogether. You ask me, do you think that we don't, well, more of an agreement, we don't have to learn from pain, right? But I feel like you can learn from someone else's pain, but to connect with one another, I
Yeah.
feel like in pain, people can relate because it's like, okay, your life isn't perfect because life in this existence, in this 3D, third dimension, it's not. And we have, like you said, we have choices, and these choices can lead us in so many different ways. And sometimes it'll feel like it's coming back again and again until you learn from it, right? So I agree with you. Like, no, you don't have to, but I also feel like with pain, there's a sense of connection that people can be like, oh, okay, her life wasn't always perfect. Oh, she experienced that. Me too. And that's where that community, right, starts to
Absolutely.
build. Right.
I wonder if it's just like thinking out loud, if it's, I love, I mean, I think this is why you and I connect. Like, I love when people are vulnerable and real, right? Like, okay, if you look right now, like my socks don't match, right? Like, Right? Like you're lucky if I have socks on half the time because I'm running out the door. But that's real, right? Like, or vulnerable stuff. Like, no, I actually don't connect with people that like come off as too perfect because I feel like where can I get in? I need to get in there. Like I need to know where you're just like a hot mess.
Yes, yes.
And I love that because I love that part. I love the real, the raw. And I think there's an and in there also. The and is the wounded healer sometimes has a hard time getting out of that story, right? So let's connect, not you and I, but like in general, let's connect on the vulnerability and the raw and like the realness. Like, don't pretend to me like your life is perfect because we won't be friends. But let's go, like, how much can we go farther, right? Can we build also trust and truth on what is the real story that we're trying to tell here? And the real story is that you are perfectly imperfect.
Yes.
Yeah. Like your imperfect parts make up your beautiful divine perfection.
Hmm.
And I sometimes I have a hard time with people that won't like, you like, I feel insecure sometimes. If someone comes off as perfect, it can bring out our insecurities because like, oh, well, I just barely made it through the door. How could this person, right?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So I'm totally raw, real, like what you see is what you get, and believe that our stories, like how long do I want to carry a story of like my baggage is heavy, right? And I see, and I'm sure you do too, when I see my kids replicate my baggage because they
Mhm.
chose to be with me, right? Or when I'm helping somebody and they're having a hard time getting out of their story, it isn't about judgment because we all get stuck in our story. It's about shining the light on that story,
Right.
right? Like, where can we find some light? And how can we? This is when brain retraining is really important. There's a part of us that gets hooked and addicted to our story. I'm this way on that. Like, I have been addicted to this story that I can't trust my body, right? Or I trust spirit in the body, but because I've had a hard time healing some physical stuff, it's like, oh, well, then that means I can't trust. And I have held tight to that one, that belief. And our beliefs can really come in the way of helping us remember who we really are.
Absolutely.
But I've been working on like that stuff and realizing it's really not about being perfect. It's about saying, oh, here, I'm going to lay out my stuff here and realize this is not my truth. And I'm willing to look past it to see that's 5D consciousness, right?
Right.
I can bring 5D consciousness, which is I am light, I am whole, I am love, and you can move it through the 3D real stuff.
Right.
And that's magic.
That's magic. Yes, I agree. That is like where the changes happen, right?
Yeah.
And I look at it as being in your comfort zone, right? You get comfortable with these thoughts. You get comfortable with this idea that you've been probably living forever since you can remember. And so to introduce some kind of change and say, you know what, this is not me, that 5D element of bringing, saying, I am light. Ooh, it sounds so foreign at first.
Right.
And so you may be moving an inch out of that comfort and it gets uncomfortable and you
Mhm.
feel that discomfort and then you retreat and go back in. So there's this part of just keep pushing into it and leaning into it, right? Oh,
Yeah, it's a big one to try and like we were talking about reaction versus responding, right? And yeah, I mean, I think well, a lot of us have those big aha moments when we're like, oh, the trajectory of my life changed.
right.
And I responded in a different way. but we still have to get up in the morning and be within ourselves every day, shower, get breakfast ready, do all the mundane things in life. And that's where I feel like we can make some real small but big shifts in our lives. When like that's when like really spirits, if we as humans can work on our beliefs and the stuff that we're stuck in that feel really profound because they're doozies, they're big. But if we're willing to open those doors, then spirit comes like rushing in because spirit needs permission because we're human.
Yep.
If we can open those channels, spirit's like, oh, no problem. We're here. I'm here.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if you ever experienced that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Everything you're saying definitely resonate. To those who probably aren't, it's like just be open to receive, right? It's the key. It's just be open to that gentle spirit and think of love, that golden white light. If you want, if you need the imagination, need to visualize it and just feel it through your body, just flow and saying yes. Yes, you can, right? I want
Yeah.
to I want to move this forward a little bit because there's one part I really want to get to is you moved your family to Israel. Your
Oh,
whole
that sounds
family
like,
to Israel,
oh.
to the mountains. So I'm thinking in my head, is this like no one else is around? Is this, and what was the choice that led to this? I mean, there's that saying when well, no, actually it's when a woman cut her hair. But when somebody makes a big decision like that, big things are gonna happen,
Mhm.
you know.
Big things happened. So my husband was a rabbi, and we were like a rabbi's family for 18 years. So it was a long time. And my oldest was 13. And so I had four kids between 13 and 7 at the time. I can't remember. I think he was four.
Mama braid. They're
I
still
think,
alive and
yeah,
doing
I know.
well.
4 or 5, my youngest.
Yeah.
So we had this dream we had lived there before, by ourselves without the kids. So we knew what we were getting into. My husband had been there before. And I think part of it was we were really hoping for, I don't know, I wasn't that young. I was in my early 40s, and my mom had been diagnosed with cancer. And at the time it wasn't, I don't think it was like huge, like serious. I think at the time she was okay.
Mhm.
And it was like this kind of moment of this opening happened. Like we couldn't be a rabbi's family anymore. We were done with some of the politics and the um, difficulties of it is kind of intense. It's like living in the limelight all the time. And I just had a vision. I wanted my kids to be kids and not Rabbi B's son, Rabbi B's daughter, right? Like I wanted my kids to just be Maya, just be Avi. Like I just wanted them to be regular kids. And
Right.
it was a really important thing for me. And so we checked it out, my husband and I, and we went for a couple of weeks by ourselves. And I had always had a dream of living in the mountains, and like this was going to be great because it was the Jewish mountains. But so there was a village. It's called a yeshuv or a kibbutz, and there was a lot of different villages like that in Israel. And we lived on. So we moved our family to the top of this mountain, and it was in a village. And so there were people all around. It was like, that community I was talking about.
Yes.
In some ways, I got there and I was like, oh my God, I found my heaven. Like, and for me, like, if I kind of put everybody else, like my kids and my husband, and I just focus on me, there were animals everywhere. I fed 20 cats in the morning and 20 cats at night. I adopted my dog. I fostered him and then he became mine. So he's from Israel. He's sitting here. I also took two cats, back here to Denver, but like I was like home. I was in the mountains. People were bringing food and welcoming us. it was like the community I always wanted. It was really beautiful. Until it wasn't. And unfortunately, especially my oldest son really struggled. He's very open about it. He really struggled. He was bullied pretty badly, and we were very worried about his mental health. And he's a really strong, beautiful personality. And we always say he's always kind of the center. Like we all grab, for better or worse, we all kind of like navigate around him. And he was not okay. And then my youngest was not okay. And my youngest was diagnosed with dyslexia, very severe dyslexia. And they said to us, like, you need to choose a language. Like, he's not going to be able to read English and read Hebrew. He can't do both.
Wow.
Yeah. And, my other daughter was struggling finding her voice, finding her place in a
Mhm.
different country. And my second daughter thrived. She was like, I'm in, like, sign me up. And
All the
so
characters.
it
Oh
was
my goodness.
hard. It was a really big, we tried to move out of the mountains and into the city to get my son this help he need. And we really all went downhill from there. And a lot of people say when you move to a different country, if they're younger, they'll adjust. And like nobody was adjusting.
Yeah. Well, 13 is kind of,
Not young.
not, yeah, they're like becoming their own person. This is incredible.
Yeah.
You
I
did.
really, I really, on one hand, living in those mountains and having, like, for me personally, it was incredible. And then as a mom, it was horrific. I was going to school with my kids. I was like, my daughter was hiding in the bathrooms, like, and I had to go to school and help her. And like, and I beat myself up. It was one of those like, is that the trauma that my kids endured? And did I willingly hand my kids over and say, like, here you go, kids, the choice I made, right? Talk about choices and responding. And I was like, oh, it's one of the I mean, my husband and I were just discussing it yesterday. It's like, do we have regret?
Mhm.
Like sometimes, but I wouldn't want to have continued to live the way we did.
Right.
Um, my son is an incredibly deep human being. All of my kids are. And I think that at some point he would have kind of had all these challenges, and we managed to see it faster. It was like, here you go. It was like spirit was like, here. And
Mhm.
so we moved to Colorado. We got him the help he needed. It took a long time. And he's always was, but he's a beautiful human being. I mean, now he's helping other people.
That's amazing and incredible because,
Hard.
yeah, you went through this horrific but beautiful experience, moved to Israel, followed your heart. And the beauty is you realized it wasn't working for your family and you came back or you did what you had to ensure that your family is continually being fed what was needed,
Yeah.
you know. And how much we live with with those past regrets,
Ugh,
but how we can say, you know what? I made this change. I made
yeah.
a change. I made another choice. I did a pivot,
Mhm.
you know, and now you can say your son is thriving, and it sounds like all your kids are thriving and doing well.
Yeah. I think that like we all, not just as parents, but a lot of us as parents too, like we realize our choices are not just ours, right? And also we make choices in the moment that, I mean, it was the best choice for us, or we wouldn't have done it,
Right.
right?
Like, how amazing is it to experience a small village
It was
in a
amazing.
whole nother culture? And perhaps it wasn't right then and there, but in the future, you never know what that opened doors to and
Right,
we can bless. And we're also that source, we have that source around us and how we can pray that this just multiply
right.
and open our hearts to more. We can always go into prayer or meditation, conversations with Creator, with Source, with God, and use that as a way, to say, okay, I made this choice. may it still multiply my family, help my family thrive, and look at what's happening. Because I know you're a woman of faith and belief and of, you know, using all the elements to bring in beauty into your life. And it's incredible. It's incredible what has come about and all these women, all these people that you're helping and inspiring.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing your story and even the pivots in there and how
Mhm.
it was not as perfect as you thought, but like still from the beginning, from what we were talking about, you mentioned how your family, your children is your community
Mhm.
and how beautiful your family is today. So
Mhm.
thank you.
Thank
In
you.
closing, I have one more question. If there was anything that you wish that you would have known when you were younger, or any message that you would share for those who are listening to this, what would that be?
I would say number one is that when we think we're alone and broken, there's always, it's sometimes hard to find it, but don't give up because within you are like all of these beautiful gifts and
Mm,
this light. And sometimes it does take a pivot, and it also takes a lot of forgiveness. You
mm,
know, we all, because we're human, like you and I said, we all make choices, and sometimes those are beautiful choices, and they're all beautiful choices, right? And so I think I would say like you're not alone, and you don't have to be a super duper intuitive, crazy person like healer and right, like everybody has the ability to walk the path of the spirit within each one of us. So I
oh,
would say like you're never ever alone.
mm. Thank you. Thank you for that message. That felt so good. I feel all of that
Mm.
frequency. Well, everyone, thank you for joining us for She is Sacred Her, sacred, highly exalted rebel. It is saying yes to ourselves and trusting in our own inner wisdom. Thank you to our sacred guest, Ariela. Thank you for allowing us to celebrate your unique and amazing, incredible story. Thank you for being vulnerable. Thank you for sharing your truth, your love, and your sacredness.
Thank you so much for having me and so nice having conversation with you. Yeah, I loved it.